Please put your hands together for this wonderful people. For those who are heads of organizations, you know that the human resource is the engine room. Because no matter how much money an organization has, if you don't have the right people in human resource, you're not going to get to the full potential of the organization. So we're happy that you're able to come, and we're hoping that you'll share your practical experience with people who are here, who are wondering how they can put processes and policies that can help their workplace to be more diverse and inclusive of everyone. So, to kickstart the discussion, I have had the opportunity to work with people and do admin. I'm not a certified human resource director or manager. I hope that when I grow up, I'll be such. So one of the things I see that most people kick back on is processes. They say this organization likes to follow due process, okay, and policies, because somehow people think that these things are bureaucratic. I just want to get your idea of why you think that policies and processes are important in any organization, to start with, before we talk about the meat of our discussion. I'll start with you because you're closest to me.
Okay, so can you hear me? All right. Yeah, so policies, you know, the way I would see it, not just the general view that people see it. Policies for me is an enabler for you to be able to drive home your agenda. So if you have, you know, a plan, a huge ambition to do something, you need an enabling policy to make sure that people are able to follow certain sets of behavior that will make you achieve, you know, that goal that you set up for yourself. So because of that, policy becomes something that brings order, you know, to the organization for people to follow and deliver, you know, on the promise of the company.
Thank you. So what I hear is that there's no how an organization can do without. Okay, so what I hear is that no organization can do without policies and processes. I wanted just to establish that as we continue this discussion. I don't know if any of the other panelists has something to add on. Yes.
Okay, okay, I hope you guys can hear me. Just to add to what Ola said, from a policy perspective, beyond just being an enabler alone, you also want to ensure that there is equity in application, you know, those practices, you know, because at the end of the day, that is what provides that consistency, you know, in application, you know, so that people are clear on the direction to take, you know, because we're talking about behavior. So behavior can become subjective if people are not guided, you know, around, you know, what to do if certain things happen. So with respect to what we are having conversation on today, you know, it just sets, you know, what those boundaries are, and also the direction, you know, with whatever initiative organization put in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So it's an enabler. It also helps organizations to treat people fairly. That's what I'm hearing. So that they don't say, oh, no, you're treating this person because of that. You can always refer to the policy or the process and say, this is what the organization stands for. So this is what you abide by. Yes, Olatunji.
Hello. Okay, without wanting to repeat what Henry and Ola said, I agree 100%. But in addition to that, I think policies are more like a compass. That's the reference point for everything anyways. You don't want to embark on a journey without having an alignment with your key stakeholders. And what kind of help you to draw firm on that agreement is the policy. So whatever it is that has been pre-agreed still needs to be well-defined and well-ingrained in the policy. because for every point in time, you may need to draw reference back to that and use that to kind of remind people of the journey ahead.
Okay, so thank you. So we will be talking about some of the policies and processes that can promote disability accessibility in the workplace. And we don't want to talk theory, we want to talk, practical things that can be helpful to those of us who are represented here. So I will start with a question for the Unilever HR director. We know that recently Unilever put up a policy in place to promote the employment of persons with disability. And we would like you to share what motivated Unilever towards putting up this policy. It will be good also if you can tell us a little bit about what the key components of the policy are, and how this policy has translated Unilever into an inclusive recruitment employer. Really, what has changed as a result of the policy and what has not changed? Lots of questions in one.
Yeah,
We hope you'll be able to handle those.
No, I would try. And I would probably tell the story. So I'd like to tell the story so that at least it can make sense. As a business, there are three key sustainability ambition that, Unilever set out for itself. The first one talks about ensuring that there's living wage. If you hear me very well, I say living wage for everyone that have to do something with us, either as an employee or even if you are a third-party contractor. So living wage, we all know is better than what we call the minimum wage, okay? We know minimum wage in Nigeria today, and we also know the price of diesel. So, it's clear in that respect. The second part is the bit around inclusiveness, making sure that we are able to set an agenda to include different forms of, people in our organization, people with disability, women, making sure that our diversity agenda is huge and in the front line for everybody, okay? The third part is more around ensuring the right level of capability, what we call future fit skills for everyone, which also includes people with disability. But if I narrow down the second one, which is the bit around inclusivity, this is where we have an agenda on diversity and inclusion, and especially on people with disability. We set an agenda to say by 2025, 5% of our employees will be people with disability. Out of this 5%, we also know that there are a number of our employees that have one form of hidden disability or the other. So 2.5% of this 5%, we are going to focus on our existing employee to self-declare, their different disability. And it could just be, people with arthritis, for instance. And we have practical example of where you put someone in second floor and he's got arthritis. If that individual does not declare, you probably are not able to solve that simple problem by just ensuring that this individual is on the ground floor, to work. So without putting pressure, on themselves. So, so, the other 2.5% are some of the things that we're doing to say we want to develop the capability and capacity to be able to have the right behavior in the organization to get people with disability into our pool. So between 2020, when we set out the agenda, into 2025, we said we're going to have at least 5% of our employees, with people with disability. So, but to do this, I mean, one thing is to have a policy. The other is also to see how ready as an organization that you are. This is a global policy. So you now need to double click in your different area to say, what is the perception of the society? How ready are you, even with your own employees? What do they need to know to create the right level of accommodation for whatever type of people with disability you are able to start with? And then we sat back to say, let's make this simple. In Nigeria, I look after West Africa. So in Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire, what is the perception in each of the country? Let's even start with infrastructure, okay? How ready is our building? What policies do we have? For us to be able to do this, we're now experts. So our partnership with Sightsavers, for instance, help us to, first of all, even do the assessment process, to look at our structure, to look at our policies, and look at so many things that was also spoken about by previous speakers. So with that, we're able to establish our baseline to say, if we have to invest in infrastructure, it also costs money. So you need to plan, because it's a private organization where you also need to plan for everything. So we invested, in relooking our infrastructure, providing some structure on the head office, did similar, assessments in our factory space, and start to adjust this bit by bit. So in the last 2 years, if you come to our head office, you will already, see that we've made a lot of progress in this, but that doesn't mean that we're, where we expect to be. But at least the fact that we start the journey, looking at the culture, looking at the capability of our people, on the infrastructure, we now move to behaviors. Okay. How are we going to make sure the leaders themselves see this as a proper journey to embark on? So, through some of the program that was also developed to educate people, inviting also people with disability to come physically and have, engagement with our people, we start to build that resilience, And then we also say, if you want to do this, it's not just about the numbers, just because we have, the targets and numbers. Why don't we try gradually? And then with our partnership with Utiva, Sightsavers, we got, a number of people. As of today, I think we have about 5 people with us. I actually have 2 individuals who are also in this hall. One of them in charge of our customer engagement specialist, doing amazing work, across our business. Akpewe, if you're there, if you just raise your hands. Thank you. And then we also have today, because part of the things that you also provide to make sure there's a lived example, it's also when people see. So in our team today, in our talent acquisition team, I also have, Veronica, who is also here too, yeah? If you're there, it's also part of our talent acquisition team, helping us to, yeah. So, but one of the things that we also did as an enabler is we used to have what we call a referral policy to refer people, for employment. So we decided in 2020, and Jibola, who is now in Microsoft, was the brain behind this. He used to work with me, and he was the champion for diversity at that time, making sure that we're able to move this way. We actually now redesign our referral policy. So if you refer, people with disability and the individual got employed, you actually get as much as 1,000 euro, okay, as a referral, as part of our referral policy. And then, we hold every 3 months, leadership team holds diversity, we call them diversity board, where we look at numbers, where we look at where we're going, where we look at resources, because you need finance to be able to do a number of things. And then we get insight from them. So we use this board to do 2 things. One, to get leadership buy-in on what we're doing, but also to get the appropriate, approval for financing to systematically scale whatever that, we're doing. So I would also say the last one to support, the policies that we also have put in to help us is to continue to be in environment like this, to take some learnings, share experience, and also see, just have to continue to scale. I would say that the parts, because, it's not all sweet, yeah? Because it's not easy in a society that has different level of understanding when you are trying to do this. Aside from the financing, which ideally because it's a global ambition, we have that support. For instance, just 2 weeks ago, we launched the procurement for procurement support. I mean, it's like a procurement project where people with disability, and especially women with disability, that has an entrepreneurial opportunity but does not have capital to start. Unilever has earmarked €2 billion globally. Yeah. So what that means, if I say globally, then you say, so how much comes to us? The way I would want to think is, if there is a 2 billion basket, if you raise your hand, you are tapping from it. You don't need to think about how much comes to Africa. And the more we are able to do that, get people registered, go through certification with our support to also coach those entrepreneurs, to benefit from this, the more we are able to take from the, basket of opportunity that is there. So, aside from, scaling up the capability of our people to accept and include people with disability, incentivizing them to even bring more people to us, we're also looking at people who will not do regular job, but people who have some kind of trade that would also be beneficial to us to latch onto that. So there are, quite a number of progress that we're seeing, but we also know that we need to scale up this acceptability, because I give you a simple example. If you have a task in your function, and then we say, we need you to have someone with disability, the first thing that will come to your mind is, how would the individual meet up? That is the first thinking that they have. Unfortunately, there's a lot, that we are learning every day, that once you are able to get the right person in, and I'm not saying creating job, but is actually identifying those value-adding job and getting somebody to do it. Apewe, for instance, is one of the most outstanding examples, that I can ever see, because every week we are going to see everybody in West Africa will see the employee engagement analysis, customer engagement analysis that, Apewe does for us. So for me, it's not about creating jobs, but identifying the critical value that those roles actually do, and employing people into doing that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing the Unilever story. I think a few things that jump out of this discussion for me is how Unilever is intentional. you start with a plan, and you can see that, they started with a solid plan. This is where we want to see ourselves in the next 5 years. This is how we're going to take the steps. And for those of you who listened to the keynote address, some of the barriers that Dr. Adebayo mentioned are around attitudes, environment, communication. And if you heard the story of Unilever, you can see that they are intentional, about changing the perception of their staffing and their organization. They've made a lot of investment in changing the environment to make sure that it's inclusive. They are incentivizing people. So what it says is that if you want some extra cash, refer someone with a disability. So you can see that they're actually serious about this business, and we really appreciate all the efforts that you're making to make Unilever diverse and more inclusive.
Thank you.
So we're moving on to British American Tobacco. We'd like for Tunji to tell us a little bit about the disability data collection and assessment that you did. What motivated you? What was the process like? And of course, what did you find when you did that disability assessment? And how is this assessment driving inclusive policies in British America Tobacco? And what lessons have you learned from the process? So many questions in one, but I know you can tackle them. So it's over to you, Tunji.
Okay, that's a multiple barrier question. I'll see where to start from. Perhaps I should take a little step back. Just taking a tour from Ola's commendable story. For us at British American Tobacco, I would say it's a journey that we have embarked upon for some time, but it's more reinforced in the last 2 years. And I'll get back to the reason why I said that. So we have a clear strategy. We believe in diversity and inclusion. That's why we have a role defined and designed for that globally and in the various end markets. Our focus is to create an all-inclusive environment, an environment where we provide access and equal opportunity for all. And I'm saying for all because we want to kind of change the narrative. It's not just about focusing on individuals and saying they are people with disability. For us, we believe we are differently able. So it means all of us with all the difference that we can bring on board. But key to it is we are aware that we need specific interventions for people with disability. We cannot apply policies the way they are. So first thing we did is to ingrain inclusivity for people with disability in our diversity agenda. So it's one of the pillars, one out of 4 pillars within our diversity agenda. And we've embarked on a lot of initiatives in the past, I'll say 18 months thereabouts. So we've done, we work very closely with Center for Inclusive Development and Site Savers to do disability assessment audits. We do understand where our gaps are and the actions that we need to take. We have a group of high-profile people who are in work group. We call them inclusivity work group, who kind of look from time to time on things on how to improve our work environment for people with disability. We recently embarked on an assessment, and we didn't call it disability assessment. We call it inclusivity assessment survey, just to kind of underscore the fact that we are trying to create an enabling environment where we can include people with disability. So the feedback from that survey was quite revealing. If you look at some of the reports and some of the statistics were shared earlier on today, the World Health Organization says that 1 out of every 7 people is living with disability, right? which portends that even in our work environment, we do have people currently with disability. So our survey reveals that we have about 6% of people with disability. Now, you can't take that number as real. Frankly, that number is small because the survey we made it anonymous and it's also confidential. We made it voluntary. So for that reason, we had about 55% respondent rate. We had another 1% who said openly, we are not going to fill the survey. So 44% I would assume, 43% I would assume they are not sure whether they should fill or not, right? Because it's the first time. So in any case, we can say categorically that 6% of the entire workforce are people with disability. And our intention is to find a way to drill down into those groups and see what are the things that we need to do differently. But before the survey, our environment really, we've made it an enabling environment for people with disability. So if you drill down into that survey, we discovered that out of that 6%, 4% is from anxiety and depression. So this is what you can categorize as invisible disability, whereas the other 2% are people with ear impairment, visual impairment, and limb impairment. It was quite revealing for us because it sort of tells us that already we have an environment where we have people with disability. So that's one key learning for us. But what we want to do in terms of going forward is key. There are three broad things that we're looking at. Our target is that by the end of this year, we will bring on board people with disability through internship program. So, and we call it, it's an internship program with a plan to bring them on board as a full-time employee on the long run. So how do we plan to do this internship program? It's us identifying people, and when I say people with disability, I'm referring to people who are capable of working in our environment in terms of skills, right? We would create the enabling environment, but they also need to match with the skill set that is required for the roles that is available. We would attach those people to our top team for a mentorship program. And at the end of the process, we will enroll them into roles, vacant roles that are available. So it's a deliberate program on one hand to identify people with disability that have skills. On the other hand, to kind of prepare the organization, to have interaction with our focus group, and more importantly, to ensure that we have a dedicated channel to bring in people with disability into our work environment. So these are some of the specific things that we are embarking upon at the moment.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience. I would encourage that if you have any question for any of them, just put it down. We may not be able to take it in at the end of this session, but we'll see how we can address those questions subsequently. So if you have any questions that you would like for them to clarify, just put it down. And what is interesting, as I heard you speak, is how that you had the courage to ask. It's not very common in Nigeria, which we like to generalize things. Oh, all Nigerians are suffering. Oh, we don't have jobs, but when they say what are the facts, then nobody's actually measuring. And I'm not surprised that you did not get a very high response rate from the survey. We're very suspicious as Nigerians, isn't it? I don't want to complete the survey, so maybe they're looking for who to sack. I don't want to be that person. Okay, but it's interesting how that if you ask, you actually will find. And one of the things we encourage people to do in Sightsavers is to, if you go to a marketplace, if you go to a bank, you go to an organization, and you don't see anybody with a disability, something is wrong. Something is wrong. It's not because they don't exist. It's possibly because you've not made the environment friendly enough to be there. So you go to a workplace and there's no person with disability, it's not normal. We need to create that awareness, okay? And we're happy that you didn't just ask, you're doing things intentionally to make sure that you're addressing the issues that you found out. It will be very interesting for us to do, a survey of Nigerians. When you talked about anxiety and depression, I said, yes, of course, in Nigeria, definitely. People will be anxious and people will be depressed. Just living in Lagos is enough reason to be anxious, moving around in the traffic. But we appreciate the fact that you're using facts, to plan your interventions, and definitely you'll have a lot to measure along the line. So this has been quite interesting. When the executive secretary was talking about how persons with disability benefit from MTN, from the banks, I was surprised he didn't mention electricity. Because definitely for now, we pay as we go. So we would like to hear the experience of Ikeja electricity. We would like to also know, how you came about employing persons with disability. We hear that you've been in the business since 2016. What has been the journey so far for you? What lessons have you learned? And what are some of the things that have informed all the inclusive processes and policies that you've put in place? So we'd like to hear from you.
Okay, thank you very much, Joy. So for us, the journey has been quite an interesting one. Because in 2016, when we started the journey, I would say we started from the deep end of the journey because we were deliberate to have as our first set of people we bring in to be those that are visually impaired, because it comes with itself, a lot of, learnings, to be able to transcend that particular journey. So it's been quite a learning process for us as an organization, also for our people, because it's one thing, for you to have a plan to embark on that journey. But more importantly, for the people that persons with disability will be working with, having the right mindset, because you're going to have somebody coming into a team and there's a prejudice already, or a perception, with respect, to the new resource that you're bringing within the team. So from the people's side, you find out that line managers, have to begin to unlearn and begin to learn on how to manage, people with disability in itself. Because I can tell you, if you work in a high-performing team, managers just want people that they believe, will hit and deliver value, from day one. So from that perspective, getting to increase the awareness, when the executive secretary was talking about, in his opening speech, that awareness is quite critical, getting everybody on board, in that journey, in employing people with disability. Now, from an organizational perspective, I think Tunji and Ola had also alluded to that. Getting the infrastructure in place, is very, very key. You need to know what you're up against, especially if you inherit a facility that was not purpose-built, to welcome people, with disability. So getting to understand what changes you need to make, within your facility, I think from an organizational perspective, it's very, very, crucial, which is where the audit, comes in. So for us, if you're visually impaired, what that means is that every single barrier, to free movement, has to be eliminated, because what I've come to learn, with my colleagues, who are visually impaired, they don't want to be helped. That's the reality. They want to be treated like every other person. So today, because I work from the 4th floor, and my window, oversees a different building, where, some of these my colleagues work. And I'm really amazed on how they can find their way. It's almost as if, they are more aware than you and I, who claim to be fully bodied, person. So the infrastructure readiness it's a very, very crucial perspective for us, So it's also a journey, that organization who wants to embark on that path, you need to take it in piecemeal, in phases, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You must be in it for the long game. It's not about all of the PR stunts, that, oh, I want to go out in the press, to announce that I'm inclusive and I'm diverse. So from a lessons perspective, that is where it gets quite interesting, because even managing careers, of these individuals, you have to be very deliberate about it, to ensure that from a performance evaluation perspective, there's equality, across board. That's also being deliberate to have a very, very clear career path for them. When Ola was talking about finding that unique job, for us, because we work in a very, very high risk, business environment, just one slip or mistake, you understand, it's what stands you between being able-bodied and being disabled, So we also have people in the course of their work, that they become, they have disability. You're working on a 33,000 volts, overhead line, or an 11,000 volts, just a minor slip, you are electrocuted, you understand? And one of your arms need to be amputated, you understand? It changes the dynamics, for you in the workplace. So the big question is, okay, what do you do with this individual? He's worked to you for 10, 15 years. He has all of the capacity and experience, so being deliberate to begin to now reskill these individuals, to perform other roles, becomes a very, very critical, aspect of you going through that journey. So you have to be deliberate. So the man has, in his 15 years, he's been an expert in a particular role. You now want to move him to a different role. Where is he going to start from? Is he going to start with those that are entry level? Because he will be learning a practically new role. So being deliberate, about that, is a key lesson for us. And having that budget, in your annual planning, process, will help a lot, if you're very proactive. A lot of the things, the changes that needs to be made, it needs to be backed with the funding, for it. You must think it through. If I talk about when, I think it was when the keynote speaker was talking about, putting, what do you want to make the investment in a software for the visually impaired, the JAWS, that costs maybe ₦1 million per user, application changes, almost every year, you understand, okay, you made that initial investment, your long-term investment, will be much more than that, keeping up to speed, with the changing world of work, becomes a key thing that our organization needs to understand and learn, that you need to continually evolve in that your journey, because out there, as technology is moving fast, the requirements for people with disability has to also keep, to speed, talk about universal, work environment, so if you're building a new structure, when I just got into this lift, in the lift for MTN, okay, this 2-year building, you understand, was there accommodation, for, people with disabilities? So these are the conversations, that you need to think 2-3 steps, ahead, of the game, if you want to make this quite a sustainable, journey that you want to take. So for us, it has informed us to make certain changes, to some of our policy, because prior to acquisition of the new distribution companies, if you're disabled at work, after a while, okay, you'll be declared either redundant, you're paid off, So for us, we say, okay, if we go that route, where are we going to get the skills? Out there. We're talking of 10, 20 years engineering skills, that the market is not out there. So we had to rejig, what we do with these individuals so that they continue to create, value in a different, aspect of our business. So the journey, I would say, is interesting. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You must be in it, for the long haul. You must be deliberate, about and intentional. Awareness, understanding on how to continue to deal with our colleagues, who have disabilities becomes something very, very critical if you want to embark on that journey. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience. And you actually spoke like, someone who has had the experience. It's obvious. And it's clear to us that if you're embarking on any vision for diversity and inclusion in your workplace, you're not running 100 meters or a 200 meter, you're actually running a marathon, okay? So that you can take it slow and you can be deliberate. I think I had a conversation with my daughter recently and they were running a marathon relay and she was telling me the different techniques on how, you start out with your fastest. I didn't know that. So she said, you put your fastest so that they can create that gap, all right? So that once the people are getting tired, you already have created that gap. And I think it's good to, that's why the HR people are in front because they actually drive organizations. And like has been mentioned, when you talk about processes and policies, they are the compass of organizations, they are the enablers of organizations. Whether we like it or not, if we're looking to have workplaces that are diverse and inclusive, there are barriers. And I'm hoping that as you heard these practical suggestions, you're actually in your mind making a mental assessment of your own workplace and asking yourself, what are the barriers that exist in my own workplace? I would like for us to customize it and practicalize it. You may not be one of the big players in Standard Chartered, MTN or Ikeja Electric. It may just be your little corner where you are working, maybe just, a one-room office. Really, but what are the barriers that exist in that space? And what can you do? So this is a journey for a long time that you need to think about clearly. You need to reach out to people. And that's why we thought, okay, why don't we do this conference so that people can share their own experience to encourage other people who are reluctant, in taking this first step, not necessarily because they don't see this as important, but they just don't know how to navigate their way. There are resources that are available to support you. The Global Business Disability Network has lots of policies and processes that can help organizations that are serious, about making their workplaces inclusive and diverse. And I can tell you that you can reach out to, if you don't know who to reach out to, you can reach out to me and I can point you in the direction where you can get the support you require. Sightsavers is an organization that goes to bed every night thinking about a world where everyone with a disability can have equal access to healthcare, equal access to education, and equal access to work and livelihood. We sleep, we dream, and we know that one day it will become a reality. And so we're really proud of organizations who are stepping up to say, we're interested in making sure that we have a world where everyone can have access to employment, to livelihood, to health and education. That's where we're looking at. We're not there yet, but I know that one day we can get there. So we want to encourage organizations who are sitting here and listening. It's possible for you to start this journey, and we can assure you that we'll be here to support you. If you have questions, we'll have networking sessions towards the end. You can just meet me with the questions or meet Shola. Pardon me? Okay, Shola is asking us to take one. He's the one who brought a piece of paper and said, I want to remind you about the time. Okay, so, but he's also asking me to take one. So can I just find out, does anyone have a pressing question? Yes. Okay, so the first person that raised their hand. Can someone locate them with the mic? Try as much as possible to be brief, straight to the point.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm Blessed Olasin from Empower Africa Project. So actually I have a series of them, but I just want to ask about this. Like for us in digital space, during the presentation and it talked about environment and the accommodation. And because I've seen it that even when you have the people living with disabilities in the regular environment, sometimes it may not be conducive. So is there any, because for us now in the Empower Africa Project, we've considered, like I was sharing with Mr. Shola, that we've considered a kind of work center where I know that we can't take them out, but I'm thinking of a center where people, they can have the resources and can still work like a remote, work with any institution organization. But what the question is that, is the network making arrangement for such a work center, which is going to help, is going to reduce cost, where like for, let me use this place as an example, that the people living with disabilities on Highland, though working with Access Bank, GT, HTMT, anywhere, can come closer to people living with disabilities estates and can easily come to a work center and do whatever they need to do within a time and go back, considering the transportation and several other challenges. So I'm just asking, is there any plan for that? And then I know, like for, sorry, I want to mention Tony Elumili Foundation. I remember one of the edition of the grant was basically for people living with disabilities. Is the network tries to reach out into grants opportunity and such institutions in order to have more results in helping. And I want to request that for us, we really need to take this. My younger sister, though, has gone to be with the Lord very young. I was one carrying her on my back. I feel we have this kind of, there's a kind of mind we have towards people living with disabilities that we really need to change this mindset, and we really need this campaign. I can go to any length, anywhere, knowing, because I relate, I mean, it's just a concern, and we really appreciate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I can feel the passion with which you've spoken. And so I have appointed you as an ambassador for disability, inclusion, and diversity. By the powers vested on me as the moderator of this panel discussion. Yeah, so I have heard you, and I see that you are also passionate about making sure that persons with disability have friendly work environments. Well, we would want to support the aspect of the workstations, but we would rather that everywhere is made accessible rather than just focusing on particular places being friendly for persons with disability to congregate. We are trying to discourage people with disabilities clustering together. We would prefer for them to mainstream, into all aspects of the society. So once we start making those hubs, it's like we're trying to aggregate them in a particular place, and that will defeat our intentions. But as regards to reaching out to organizations, actually, I don't want to take the spotlight, but Sightsavers has had discussions with Tony Elumelu Foundation, and we're continuing that discussion. And we were the ones who challenged them. We said, why are you not deliberate in your processes to make sure that you attract persons with disabilities? So it's a discussion that has continued to happen, and we will continue to build on that. So I hope I've addressed all of the issues that you raised. Yes, please.
Coming on, okay. Yeah, so I just, just while you were talking, I was also just thinking about future of work, Most organizations today have started doing hybrid, okay, even for their employees. And then in addition to that, people are considering if you live on the island and then you work on the mainland, since we're already doing hybrids, why can't we also latch on to some virtual workstations that is also available? So I think, we can take this as part of advocacy to say, if you are setting up a virtual offices like this, you can also create accommodation for people with disability. I think there's a point, to also take from that. Yeah.
And very interesting. So, and I think you should really consider doing that in Lagos. Maybe that will encourage me to come and stay and work in Lagos. Can we take any other question? No, okay, so Shala is the referee and he says we are out of time for this session. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience. Please put your hands together as we take our seats.